One of the reasons that Colorado was settled was because of gold. Gold was discovered in the 1850s.
Not a lot of gold, but enough to strike a fever in men's and women's hearts. And 50,000 fortune seekers flooded into this area.
During the Pikes Peak Gold Rush, one of the main forms of gold was in gold dust and flakes that miners were taking out of streams in the mountains. And miners couldn't spend that very well.
Miners would literally go into the bars of Denver, Colorado with their bag of gold dust. Having fat fingers was a job requirement for a good bartender because he would dip his fingers into the miner's bag and take a little pinch of gold dust.
Every store had a scale so that they could weigh out the pinches of gold, and ultimately it became a standard that one pinch of gold was worth a quarter. Although if you had big thumbs, you could really make a killing.
But it also opens up the door for a lot of counterfeiting. A lot of these miners would take iron pyrite fool's gold or brass filings, they'd grind it up, and they'd pass that off as dust.
If the product you're purchasing is only 5 cents, how do you determine, out of that one pinch that's 25 cents, those 5 equal parts? The hardwood floors might have been a problem as well. You drop the gold dust, it's over and it's gone.
Denver was trying to become a real city, and you can't really survive on a pinch of gold dust economy. So they needed something that was a reliable measure and also something that could be packed and shipped back east. And in the case of gold, that means coins.
At the time of the Pikes Peak Gold Rush, there were mints in Philadelphia and in San Francisco on either end of the continent, but there were no mints that were serving the needs of the miners in the middle of the continent. And the need to create a mint was really fulfilled quickly by private operators.
Clark Gruber Bank and Mint, the early pioneer mint here in this town of Denver, and they were early bankers from Leavenworth, Kansas. They saw an opportunity and they started producing beautiful gold coins.
They were a standardized weight and measure that people could trust, but they were not legal U.S. tender.
Clark Gruber and Company built a brick building on the corner of 16th and Market Street on what is today the 16th Street Mall, and it was in every sense a factory in this grubby little village of Denver. And if you went in there, you would have known it right away. The noise, the sound of the coins clanking into a bin coming out of the press.
It was in kind of a sump area where effluent and stormwater would drain off the streets. It smelled bad.
People complained that it was that dirty smell of money. It was the stinkiest smell outside of the stockyards in the city.
Abraham Lincoln and his Secretary of Treasury, Salmon P. Chase at the time, found out that a private bank in the Wild West town of Denver was making its own money. They weren't too pleased. They checked all the legislation, though, and they found out there was nothing illegal that this bank, Clark & Gruber, was doing. In fact, Clark & Gruber was putting more gold in their coins than we were at the federal government in Philadelphia. So how do you stop the business? You buy them.
So when the United States government took over Clark Gruber and Company in 1862, they closed down the minting operations and they continued to run an assay office. It was a place where people could bring their gold dust, their gold nuggets, and get their value assessed. But it was also a place where you could have your gold melted down into gold bars. So they didn't make coins, but they made gold more portable for the miners.
Around the turn of the century, the Denver newspapers and civic leaders were calling out for a better mint, a mint that they could actually be proud of. And because Denver was such a mining center for both silver and gold, the city fathers felt that Denver deserved its own mint.
So the United States government broke ground on the mint in the late 1890s, and it took several years for that project finally to be completed. There were a couple of years where the mint was simply just a hole in the ground with a fence around it, and neighbors complained about this eyesore.
The original Denver Mint building was finished in 1904 and sits on Colfax Avenue.
And the mint was an absolute edifice that was rising up out of Colfax, right down the avenue from the state capitol, the beautiful state capitol. So it was part of what was an imposing, impressive boulevard that made Denver look like a very impressive city.
The designers of the United States Mint in Denver took a really interesting approach. They designed the mint to look like a Florentine villa, In fact, it was modeled specifically on a villa owned by the Medici family of Renaissance Italy, one of the great banking families. It was made of granite with horizontal beams and beautiful Romanesque arches. This building exuded wealth and elitism and security, which I guess is what you want your coin factory to do.
The paintings really represent industry and commerce. The chandeliers in the Mint are modeled after Tiffany chandeliers. Well-designed, beautiful buildings did feature Tiffany chandeliers and fine brass work and beautiful marble and lots of color, very saturated color. But it was also expensive. Even then, that was a very luxurious, very opulent facility. And that's what the city fathers of Denver really wanted. They wanted a mint they could be proud of.
We opened in 1904 as an assay office. The reason we didn't produce coins initially is because the 3 coining presses, state-of-the-art at the time, were actually being showcased at the World's Fair in St. Louis. But once they arrived in 1906, we produced our first coins.
The first coin produced by the Denver Mint in 1906 was a $5 gold piece.
The machines were very loud and very clunky. They were huge machines that were stamping out coins, just thousands literally by the hour.
You would be surrounded by the melting of gold, the smelting of metals, and it'd be a very hot environment. This is before air conditioning. In fact, in early records, we found several orders of ice cream, 2 gallons at a time. And I theorized that most likely this ice cream may have been ordered to keep the men cool while working with all this metal.
Judges who were working in the Denver courts were complaining that they couldn't maintain order in their courtrooms. They couldn't hear anything because of the obnoxious, loud mint right across the street.
Very quickly, everywhere from Chicago to the Pacific Coast, you could find coins stamped with that distinctive D for Denver. The Denver Mint filled a need that wasn't being replaced by Philadelphia and certainly wasn't being replaced by San Francisco. San Francisco underwent a devastating earthquake in 1906, and the mint in San Francisco was temporarily placed offline. And as a result of that, Denver's coinage began filling the vacuum of coinage for the entire West. How could you work at a place like the Denver Mint without being a little tempted to see what you could get away with? And that was certainly the case for Orville Harrington, a longtime employee of the Denver Mint.
As a young man, he and his family went west of Denver to hunt for wild turkey. And he had his rifle in his hand, unfortunately tripped over a log, the rifle discharged, and it was a bad accident. They would lead to his toes being amputated, part of his foot, part of his ankle, so he would end up with a very simple prosthetic device, a wooden leg, if you will.
He was a well-educated man. He graduated with honors from the School of Mines, the Colorado School of Mines, but he couldn't get a job as a mining engineer because of his handicap.
He landed a job in the rolling room, making $3.50 a day. Pretty good money back then. And he would work with the small gold bars called anodes that weigh 5 to 10 pounds, and his job is to roll those out into a 5 to 6 foot long strip that the blanks could be produced from. Orville is an honest, faithful man for 14 years toiling away here at the Denver Mint. 1920 comes around. He looks at his pay stub and he notices he's still making $3.50 a day. So you know what he decides to do? Give himself a raise.
Orville hatched a plan. He stole 1 bar of gold a day from the mint during the period between inventories, so no one would realize that gold was walking out of the Denver Mint.
He catches a streetcar, takes it to his house near South University Boulevard in Florida, near the University of Denver in I-25, and he starts burying the bars in the backyard, then puts more in the crawl space in the basement. Well, as we all know, eventually crime does not pay, you get caught.
How many bars of gold do you really need, it turns out, right? Well, Orville Harrington stole, allegedly, over 50. And eventually his fellow employees became suspicious.
Orville stole 1 too many bars.
His coworker one day witnessed Orville wrapping a gold bar in a cloth, and he thought that was quite suspicious. Well, his coworker just happened to be best friends with the head of the U.S. Secret Service based here in Denver. Probably the wrong coworker to be working with if you plan on stealing gold bars at the Mint. So, you know who got a phone call that night? The Secret Service. They arrested him the next day. We get the gold back. Orville receives an all-expenses, free paid vacation to Kansas. of course, to the federal penitentiary at Leavenworth. Newspaper editors across the country, small and large, got a hold of a mugshot of Orville, where his wooden leg was exposed. And here's the story they ran. Employee of Denver Mint removes false wooden leg, hollows and carves out wooden leg to hide and conceal gold bars. Made a great story. The guy had a wooden leg. The media ran with the story. But it wasn't true. It was simply his jacket pocket.
His wife, who seemed to be pretty naive, believed that he was just an avid gardener because he was always out in the backyard digging around and puttering around, and she thought that he had a green thumb. His thumb was really cold.
So probably the most famous incident, if you will, at the Denver Mint is what's known as the Great Mint Robbery.
In all fairness, the Mint was never robbed. The gangsters did not actually gain access to the Mint. It was the Federal Reserve that was robbed.
It was a robbery of an armored car that took place during an exchange of currency, of paper currency, from the Mint to an armored car.
The Federal Reserve stored currency in the Mint's vaults. And on the morning of December 18th, 1922, the Federal Reserve truck pulls up to the Colfax Avenue entrance of the Mint.
The guards get out of the truck, walk into the Mint, and retrieve $200,000 of $5 reserve notes, $5 bills. They come out with these bundles, place them in the Federal Reserve truck, lock the Federal Reserve truck doors, and as soon as they did, gangsters in a stolen Buick touring car screamed around the corner on Delaware Street and pulled up to the left side of the truck.
Men jumped out, held guns on the guards.
Harvey Bailey got out, went to the back of the Federal Reserve truck, and approached Charles Linton, a Federal Reserve guard. He said, "Hands up, this is a robbery." Charles Linton, being a brave man that he was, said, "You're not robbing this truck today." They unfortunately shot him on the spot. He was the only Federal Reserve guard ever shot and killed in the line of duty.
Gangsters are picking up packets of money. Guards are diving under the truck to try to take safety.
They managed to get into the truck, get all $200,000 of $5 bills.
The car goes up on the sidewalk, knocks over a fire hydrant. The fire hydrant's going up in the air, and the getaway car disappears down Colfax and across Broadway.
And never were seen again.
The whole thing is over in 90 seconds. This is the most exciting thing that has ever happened in Denver. In January of 1923, the police got their big break. A plumber noticed that a sturdy padlock had been placed on an abandoned garage on Gilpin Street.
In the frigid cold, they find the getaway car with the body of one of the robbers frozen stiff inside.
The police had no idea who the frozen dead mint robber was. So they literally put a photo of the mint robber on the front page of the newspaper asking, "Who is this man?"
He was so frozen that they couldn't identify him. They couldn't take fingerprints. And gruesomely, they thawed his body out, peeled the skin off of his fingers, put that skin on the fingers of police officers, and made fingerprints which provided a positive identification.
He was Nick Sloan, and he had recently been paroled from the Nebraska State Penitentiary. He was a gangster, and a bad gangster at that, but he was Denver's gangster.
Authorities had a pretty strong suspicion of who had committed the robberies, but they were never able to actually capture any of the alleged robbers red-handed or with any of the evidence. Authorities were able ultimately to recover about $80,000 of the $220,000 or so dollars that had been stolen, but much of the money disappeared. I guess sometimes crime does pay. What did the bank robbers say in the 1930s? Why do you rob banks? It's because it's where the money is. The Denver Mint is where the money is.
So the first addition to the Denver Mint at this location was built in 1935. It was decided also to up the security a little bit. 1936, in fact, we installed a machine gun nest, a sentry box, if you will, that would overlook the main entrance in the grand hallway. Officers would be stationed there with a Thompson submachine gun, a Winchester repeating rifle, .38 revolver. And if all that failed, there's a foot pedal in the sentry box. If it's pressed, tear gas would be flooded throughout the corridor at 20 locations.
So if they couldn't stop you from coming into the building, they could make everybody leave. And thankfully, we never needed to use any of those weapons. The exterior part of the Mint, these huge doors, 2,000 pounds apiece, solid bronze, those were a pretty good security measure.
The reason all that was added is because previous events in our mint's history, but also because of all the gold that was being shipped to the facility in the 1930s.
There was a period in the 1930s when the U.S. gold supply was pretty much consolidated at the Denver Mint.
In 1934, federal authorities shifted their gold reserve from San Francisco to the Denver Mint.
The U.S. government wanted to put 1,000 miles of mountains and desert between the coast and our gold supply in the event of an attack.
And in order to do that, the federal government had to figure out how to ship $26.4 billion in gold bullion from San Francisco to Denver.
What's surprising? It was advertised. In fact, newspapers far and wide between San Francisco and Denver reported gold bullion, gold bars, were being shipped for safekeeping from the San Francisco Mint here to Denver. In fact, crowds of people arrived and lined the streets between Union Station here in Denver and the Denver Mint to watch this spectacle unfold in the middle of the night. That gold that was shipped from the San Francisco Mint in the form of gold bars was transferred by the United States Postal Service.
And as soon as one train reached Denver, the next train would leave from the yards in San Francisco, so that there was always a constant stream of rail traffic trickling gold bars from San Francisco to Denver. But the government pulled it off. They transferred the bullion without incident to the vaults in the basement of the Mint, where much of it still resides today.
During the 1930s, when Fort Knox was under construction, there was more gold stored in the Denver Mint than any place else on Earth ever in the history of the planet at the height of the Depression.
The Great Depression, of course, was a difficult time for the Mint, as it was for the rest of the nation, but coming out of the 1930s and into the war, the demand for coinage in the United States really increased.
Vending machines were actually starting to come into vogue in the 1930s. They sold everything from gumballs to soda pop and sandwiches. The first automats were really coming on in the 1930s.
Slot machines, coin-operated gaming devices as well, and of course parking meters began to appear in cities throughout the country. All of these devices were devices that used coins for payment, but also kept those coins out of circulation for a long period of time. And consequently, the demand for minted coins began to increase in the 1940s.
So in 1943, because of World War II and the need to build tanks, aircraft, and machinery, the Treasury shipped all their copper that was primarily used to make the penny and other coins to the Department of Defense.
We reduced dramatically the amounts of nickel and copper and even silver that we were using. A lot of people will mention the 1943 Steely penny. Prior to this, the penny would have been mostly copper. We started making pennies out of steel coated in zinc.
At the end of the war, brass and copper was suddenly a surplus because of all the war material that needed to be recycled. The Denver Mint accepted millions of brass and copper casings, which were melted down and recycled in the copper and brass cores of pennies.
The Denver Mint was traditionally run by men, but in the 1940s, women came into the Mint to fill jobs that had been previously filled by men who were now at war.
Right from the beginning, we were actually employing a lot of different people, including women. A lot of the women were in all kinds of different positions. Many of them were actually coin adjusters. They would take the gold blanks and they'd weigh them, and they had to make sure they were just the right weight. If they were not, they had to file off the edges of the gold blanks so that they could be within our standards of what a coin would be worth.
It was not common to have women employed in an area like this or in a manufacturing plant, especially in the early 1900s.
Mint work was considered a man's work. It was smelly, it was dirty, it was strenuous. You had to lift large bags of coins from place to place. But during the war, women stepped in and production actually increased.
The first superintendent at the United States Mint at Denver, her name was Gladys Morlock. She was appointed by President Truman, and she served in 1952 as our first female superintendent here at the Denver Mint. Some of the challenges that Gladys faced when she first started as a superintendent here was the vending machine industry. And so coin production doubled as the vending machine industry was growing. In addition to working in a predominantly male environment, I'm sure she met with some resistance in getting the respect that she deserved.
By the 1960s, silver was in short supply. It was going into several industries. One was photography, and photography uses a lot of silver in film developing. Also, the space industry, the aeronautics industry, was using a lot of silver, and we were running out.
Silver coins, quarters, dimes, to a certain extent nickels, certainly half dollars and dollars, as late as the 1960s were still made primarily of silver, and their value was still pegged to the weight of silver in the coin. And people began to hoard silver coins because the amount of silver in the coin was worth more than the face value of the coin itself.
So the U.S. government made the decision to basically take the silver out of our coins.
And so the government switched to new sandwiched coins with a copper core and a nickel exterior. And if you look at a quarter today, you can certainly see the sandwiching, these two layers that encase a copper layer inside.
The clad coins of the 1960s were just hated at first. People did not like them. They didn't feel that they were money. In fact, they didn't have the value of the silver coins. They recognized that the silver coins had value, and they hoarded them. Everybody in the 1960s, it seemed, had a coffee can somewhere with coins.
If I were asked how coins were made, I would say that there's a process. It's a lengthy process. It's nothing that anybody can do in their garage.
Creating coins is kind of a lot like making cookies. You start with the raw material, you roll it out flat, you punch out the blanks, and you stamp them. Everything else is details. How we heat the coins, how we upset them, everything else is details that make the finished coins last longer. What we're doing is we're producing coins based on demand from the Federal Reserve Bank. So we're always making coins.
In 1906, a year's production would equate to 2 weeks of production now.
We are making upwards of 30 to 40 million coins a day.
So the United States Mint has always provided coins for circulation, for the economy, so businesses can keep doing business and transactions can take place smoothly. Denver and Philadelphia produce those circulating coins. Denver provides all the circulating coins for everyone essentially living west of the Mississippi River, and will do that well into the future.
Like coins themselves, the Denver Mint is a document about our history. It's a history of our mining origins, and it's a history of our importance as a federal center and our importance in the middle of the United States. And the architecture preserves the values of our history.
We're one of the few mints that still has their original building left. We're honored to be able to still be connected to it in a very physical way.
The first thing that I hear from visitors when they see the grand hallway is nothing. They're speechless.
The beauty of the hallway captures me each and every day.
Having a mint, a beautiful, strong mint facility, was one of the things that made Denver a real city.
The Denver Mint represents the importance of Denver as an economic hub. But the Mint also represents our importance as a federal center. Denver's known as the Washington of the West, and that's a moniker that we really acquired in the 1950s and 1960s. But because of our location between California and the East Coast, the federal government has always had to have a strong presence here, and the Mint represents that federal presence which is so integral to the creation of the West and of America.
The Denver Mint has really been a part of the history of Denver for over 100 years. That D on the coin, to me, means a lot more than it was made in a factory that happens to be in Denver. To me, that D on that coin is a source of civic pride. And it's really about not just coining, it's about the history of America.
Each coin is a little piece of history. Coins represent the things that we value in our society, the faces of allegories like liberty and freedom, our symbols like the American eagle, presidents that we admire like Washington and Roosevelt and Lincoln and Kennedy. All of these are embedded in our coins, and so they become, hard little mementos of our history and our values. They represent our identity in many ways.
I think about the coins that people find and collect from the Roman Empire. And I think about the coins that are made here, and I wonder what people will be looking at 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now. And I can't help but wonder if people will know about Denver, Colorado if nothing else, because there's that D on the coin.